Hello everyone, welcome to the next session in TestNG series. So in this session we will see how we can use a single data provider for sending data to multiple TestNG methods. Okay, so if there is a scenario where I need to run multiple TestNG methods multiple times, so how I can use a single data provider to send the test data. Okay, so that we are going to see in this session. So in previous session, we have seen how we can run this create loan method multiple times by using the data provider, which is defined in the another TestNG class. Okay, so this is my data provider, which is going to send this test data to this create loan test method. Okay, so this method we have run multiple times. Now I have one more method. Let's say this is the update customer details method. Okay, so this method also I want to run multiple times with different set of test data. So similar to create loan, I will require to define some data provider for this TestNG methods as well, right? So what we can do is I will copy these things. Okay. So one way is to create a separate data provider for separate TestNG method. Okay. So for this create loan, we have created this get customer details data provider, right? So for this update customer details method, you can create a separate data provider as well. Okay. For example, similar to this data provider, I will create another data provider. Okay, let's say get customer update details. So let's say this is the data we are going to send to our TestNG methods. Okay, so currently we have only 3 entries in this 2-dimensional array. So this is the customer IDs for which I want to update my email ID and phone numbers. Okay, so this TestNG method will run 3 times and it will going to print the customer ID and updated details whatever we got from the data provider. Okay, so this is the one way. So for every TestNG method you can create the data provider separately, not a issue, but it is not a good practice, right? So you can have multiple TestNG methods in our frameworks, so you don't require to create a separate data provider for just storing purpose. Okay, if you want to run some multiple TestNG methods, you can create a single data provider, and depending upon their method name, okay, using this condition you can return the specific data to the specific TestNG method. Okay, so to store the test data in a single data provider, what I can do is I will define some name to my data provider. Let's say name equal to, in double quote, I will provide get test data. Okay, this is my data provider name, and here also I will give some get data. This is my method name. Okay, so in this data provider, this is the first 2-dimensional array object which contains these 5 entries. Okay, and what I will do is I will get this data from here and I will add it here. Okay, so I don't require this separate data provider now. Okay, so for object reference, let's say this is data for create loan, and this is data for update details. Now this data provider is going to return the 2-dimensional object reference, right? So it can return only one value at a time. You cannot return multiple object reference. Okay, so for that purpose I should have some condition here. Okay, for example, if my TestNG method is create loan, then data provider should return this value or this object reference. Okay, this value should be used for running that create loan TestNG method. Then if my TestNG method name is update customer details, okay, this is the method, then data provider should automatically return this object reference. Okay, so this value should be used in that case. Okay, so how to achieve this? So it is very simple. What we can do is I will use one parameter here for the data provider method. So inside this get data bracket, I will use one parameter. Okay, this is the method parameter. Let's say method. So you can import it from the java.lang.reflect. So using this method reference, we can get the method name that we are running. Okay, and depending upon the method name, we will send the two-dimensional array object reference. So we have already stored our test data in two-dimensional array. Okay, so I just have to use some condition now. So let's say I'll use string, let's say method name equal to, using this method reference, I need to call one method to get the name of the TestNG method dot getName. Okay, so you can see that this method returns the name of the method represented by this method object as a string. Okay, so it will return the name of the TestNG method as a string. Okay, so that I'm going to store in this string variable. String method name equal to method dot getName. Okay, so now I will use condition if method name is equals, if it is equal to, okay, so this is the first condition. If my method name is equal to create loan, okay, then it should return the data for create loan reference. Okay, this object. So I will copy this and we'll add the return statement here. Return this reference. Then we can use the next condition now. Else, you can directly use the else, but we'll add one more condition here. Else if method name dot equals, okay, so if my method name is equal to update customer details, then it should return this data for update details, right? Okay, and last condition, when method name does not match to any of the TestNG method name. Okay, it can possible that currently I only have this two TestNG method. Okay, so let's say I have one more TestNG method here, but it for that TestNG method I don't have any test data available or stored in this data provider. Okay, so it should return some values, okay, default values from here. So for that purpose I will use this else return, let's say new object no test data present. So if method name does not match to any of the method name for which data is available in the data provider, then by default it should return these values. Okay, so we should be able to get some information in the console, right? So this should be printed no test data present. Okay, so this is how you can add the test data in a single data provider, and depending upon the method name, okay, we will return the specific reference here, object reference here. So what we can do is we need to provide this data provider name to our TestNG method now. Okay, so this is the data provider this create loan should use, which is available in the data provider example 2.class, and data provider this method also use the same data provider. Okay, so both the methods are going to use the same data provider. So let's go and let's see if it is working or not. So from the XML file I am going to run one test and include method name equal to create load, and so I want to run the update customer details method also. So you can see create loan and update customer details methods has run multiple times with the different set of test data. So for create loan it has run 5 times and update customer details has run 3 times. Okay, and in the console also you'll be able to see the statements here. So for updating customer ID, okay, this is the customer ID and these are the details we have updated. Okay, that means TestNG has used the test data, okay, for updating the customer details, it has used this data, and for create loan method it has used this data. Okay, depending upon the method name. Okay, and if you don't want to create a object reference, two-dimensional object reference, then you can directly return the object from here itself. Okay, similar to this statement. Maybe that I can show you. I'll get it here, copy this, and here what I will do is return new. I will return the object of two-dimensional array. And these are the values. So if my method name equals update customer details, then this value will be used for running that method multiple times. Okay, so this is also working fine. Okay, so our both the conditions are working fine. If my method name is create loan, then this will be used, and if method name is equal to update customer details, then this should be used. Okay, so let's verify this last condition. So what I can do is, let's say I have this method update customer details 1 2 3. Okay, so for such method I do not have any test data defined in this data provider. Okay, so data provider have two datas, but these are the two conditions we have used for one is for create loan and one is for update customer details method. Okay, so there is no such condition for update customer details 1 2 3 method, right? So for this method, when TestNG is going to compare here, it will not find anything matching here, so it will go into the else block. Okay, and this object two dimensional array object should be returned with this data, no test data present, and this should be printed in the console. So here we are passing two different values, so instead of that what you can do is, let me remove this. Okay, so this entry should be written. So from TestNG XML file, this time I want to run update customer details 1 2 3. Okay, so you can see for create loan it had used the correct test data, and for update customer details you can see it has run only one time because we have sent the one entry only, and it has used this no test data present. So you should always provide some default data here. If there is no matching in the TestNG method name, then the last condition it should return some meaningful data here. Okay, so that it will be printed in the console. So this is our first point, how we can use the single data provider for running multiple TestNG methods multiple times. Okay, using the method parameter. So now let's see how we can use the ITestContext depending upon the TestNG test name or depending upon the TestNG group name. Okay, so TestNG test name, this refer to the test that we have defined in the XML file. Okay, and then for every test we can define some groups here, TestNG groups, and depending upon the group name we will provide the specific data from the data provider. Okay, so in this case also we will use the same data provider. Okay, so we have already seen how we can use the method parameter. So I will just simply comment it. So for using ITestContext, similar to the method parameter, I will define one more parameter here, ITestContext. Let's say this is my IT. Okay, so if you see this ITestContext, this is coming from org.testng. Okay, so let me add some return statement here. Return statement. Okay, so in ITestContext, it will contains all the information for a given test. Okay, so if you are using the XML file for running your test, so whatever information for this test is available in this XML file, all the information will be available in this ITestContext. Okay, so what I can do is, depending upon the test name we will use the data provider. Okay, depending upon this test name, data provider will return the specific data. Okay, so let's say my test one, instead of test one I will give test, or can give here create a loan test. This is my test name. Okay, let me remove this now. Okay, so for this test I am going to run this TestNG method multiple times, and I will have another test here. So let's say this test is update details test. Okay, and for this I am going to run our second TestNG method. Okay, update customer details. Okay, so now I just need to use this test name in my condition in the data provider. So how I am going to get the name of this test? So inside this data provider method, what I will do is to get the test name, I will define here, let's say test name equal to, so using this ITestContext reference it dot getName. Okay, so this is the method getName. It will return the name of the test in a string format. Okay, so again we will put some condition here. If test name dot equals, if my test name is equal to not this is the method name, right? So my test name, if it is equal to create a loan test, create loan test, then for that TestNG method it should return this reference data for create a loan. Else if dot equals, if it is equal to our second test update details test. Okay, and in case it test name do not match to any of the tests available in the TestNG XML, then it should return these values. Okay, so this we can put in the else. Okay, so it is very easy to understand. Using the ITestContext reference, we are just calling this getName method. It will return the name of the test. So whatever test you have defined in the XML file, that we are going to run, right? So first this test will run and this name will be returned. Okay, so that we will catch in this string test name variable. So here we are just comparing it. If test name is equal to create loan test, that means I need to use this data. Okay, data for create a loan. And if my test name is equal to update details test, then it should use this data. So let's quickly run this now. So all the test has run. So we have two tests now. Create loan test, it has executed the create loan TestNG method 5 times with a different set of tested data. And this is the another test update detail test which has run update customer details method 3 times. Okay, so this is also working fine. Now let's discuss the last point, how we can use the ITestContext depending upon the TestNG group name. Okay, so we have already seen the TestNG groups concept, okay, in detail in the previous sessions. So what we can do is I can categorize my TestNG methods into different TestNG groups. Okay, so currently we have only two TestNG methods that we need to run multiple times. So if I want to use the TestNG groups as a condition in the data provider, I will add this test into some groups. Let's say my first method create loan is belongs to this TestNG group. Let's say module 1. Okay, and my second method belongs to module 2. So here now instead of using the test name as a condition, if I want to use the TestNG groups, okay, so for example there is a scenario that I want to run some TestNG methods belong to some TestNG groups, okay, multiple times. So in such cases we cannot use the test name as a condition. Okay, So for grouping concept, you need to use the TestNG groups as a condition here. Okay, so for that purpose, just categorize your TestNG methods into different groups. Okay, and now we will use the group condition now. Let's say test group name. Okay, and using the same ITestContext object reference here, I will use it.get. So this will return all the groups that are included for this test run. Okay, so this will return the array. Okay, so test group should be in the form of string array, right? So we will convert it to the string array test group name. Okay, and for this TestNG XML file, I need to run the methods from the particular groups. So for each test, I will have to add the group tag here first. So for this particular test, this is the group I am going to run. Okay, so whatever TestNG methods which are a part of module 1 TestNG groups will be executed multiple times, and for all those TestNG groups we are going to use the some specific data from this data provider. Okay, so here we will get the group's name in this array. So now we need to put the condition now. So here we can use if TestNG group name, and at the 0th index we will get the first group name. Okay, so let's say I'm running both the groups for this test, include module 1 and module 2 as well, okay, as a part of this test. And let's say I do not have this test now, and all those TestNG methods will be picked from this class. Okay, so you may not require to add these methods and methods tag here, so we can simply remove it. Okay, so we are going to consider all the TestNG methods available in the DataProvider example1 class. Okay, TestNG class, and these are the two groups we are going to run. Okay, so these are the changes we have done, and in DataProvider example2.java, just we need to put the condition now. So TestNG groups at the 0th index. So at 0th index we will get the module 1, and at the first index we will get the module 2. Okay, dot equals. So to put the condition, as we are running both the TestNG groups from same test, what we can do is we can use the for loop here. For integer I equals to 0, I less than test group name dot length I plus plus. So for every group we need to put the condition, right? So here we will add the if statement now. If it is equals to, let's say, module 1, then please return, let's say, this reference data for create alone. So here we are running both the TestNG groups from the same test. So while returning, what we can do is by instead of returning this object reference, separate object reference, we may face some issues. Okay, so what we can do is I will create a common reference for storing the data, and that reference we will return, okay, from this data provider depending upon the group name. Okay, that means first I will take this out. I will define it here, object, let's say data equal to, we just have to initialize it. Okay, so we just have store the data depending upon the condition, okay, into the two-dimensional array object. So if my group name is module 1, then it will store this data, okay, into the data reference. And if my module name is equal to module 2, then this data will be saved, and this data I need to return depending upon the condition. Okay, so our data is stored. So at the end we just need to add the return statement now after the for loop. So our for loop is ending here, so I will add return statement here, return data reference here. And for default case, I will store the same here, else. Okay, so everything is done now. So I think it will work fine. So let's see, quickly run this now. Run as TestNG suit. Okay, so why it has used the second data for each values. So for first iteration, when this condition matches, we need to put the break, right? We need to come out of the for loop. Okay, so for that purpose, you can put break statement here in the if block. Okay, and for similar, here also we can put the break statement. Yeah, so now this time it has used user 1 2 3 4 5 for create loan, but it has used the same data for update customer details as well. So let's see why it is happening. So I think we are facing this issue because we are running both the TestNG group from the same test. I will create one more test here. Okay, so this is my, let's say, module 1, module 1 test, and let's say this is our module 2 test. So in this test we will run TestNG methods from the module 2 groups, and here from the module 1 group. Okay, so now as we are running the separate test and the group from the separate test, we should not face this issue. So let's run this now. So create loan test, this module 1 test has run the create loan method and it has used the correct data. And for module 2 test, okay, this time it has used the correct data. Okay, so we were facing the issue just because we are running the groups from the same test. So it's better to run the different TestNG groups methods from the separate test from the TestNG XML file. Okay, and this logic that we have used should work fine. So that's all for this session, guys. I hope this session will help you to understand how we can use the same data provider for running multiple TestNG methods multiple times. Okay, so for that you don't require to define your test data in a multiple data provider. Okay, and depending upon the TestNG test method name, you can pass the specific data from the data provider. And we have also seen how we can use the test name and test group name, and depending upon that we can use the specific data from that same data provider. Okay, so practice this from your side and let me know if you don't understand anything or if you face any issue in this. So thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next video soon.